How many people? Do you know how many people going to come in here? This is off limits. So, it's very complicated. This is 1940s technology. This is before the only kind of computers they had, just calculators, advanced calculators. This is all manual. All right. Welcome. This is turret 1. It took about 120 guys to operate one of these guns. And right here in this picture, you can actually see 6 stories to the gun turret, if you can imagine. Now, you can see, where would you want to keep the explosives if you're being fired at?
On the very bottom.
Oh, the very bottom. It's also where all the fuel is. It's all the way down. That way, if anybody's firing into the ship, doesn't explode. So down the bottom are the gunpowder canisters, and then you've got all your ammunition. Each one of those shells weighs the same as a Volkswagen Beetle, about 2,800 pounds.
How did the guys lift those?
Right? All together. Everything here. That's the incredible thing. There's no robots. They had to all do it manually. All these guys were, I mean, it's incredible. You had about over 2,000 guys that were cleaning and polishing and lifting and hoisting. There's nothing you couldn't do with manpower. When you're out on the outside of the ship, I'll show you, there's all these big pieces of metal all over the ship. Those are actually crane systems, and they would have all been moved by hand. When you see how big they are, you're like, I mean, ropes, obviously, and pulley systems, but still incredible. So there's elevators that bring all the explosive and all the shells up to this point, and inside these 2 rooms right here, where the guns are. And I'm going to show you one, and that's the one where you have to be really careful, and I'll spot you in there. And then I'll show you one other thing in this room that's going to blow your mind. But when you're going through the ship today, you're going to notice a couple of things. You're going to notice sometimes something's worn out, and you're going to notice paintings all over the place. This is not something we did as a presentation. This is how the ship came. So we leave things as we got them. And when it comes to the paintings, these guys were in here for hour after hour. And if you had an artist in the group, they started painting on the ship. And down inside the ship, there's even Bart Simpsons and things, because the ship was in service during the 1990s when Bart Simpson was super popular. So there's all kinds of paintings aboard the ship. So.
What year was the ship decommissioned?
Ooh-wee, that's a question people keep asking me that I should know. I'm in charge of the tours. I'm actually a terrible tour guide. That's why I asked if you wanted to have fun. I've only been here for a year, but actually in that year, I'm a venue manager. And when I first came here, it was disorganized highly. Over the last year, this team actually, they were very unhappy when I came here. Over the last year, we raised morale by 14%, which is actually 3% industry standard is considered good. Ammunition was brought in. Basically, imagine these things as giant handguns, because that's kind of what you're looking at with the way it's set up. So, let's see. And there's a bench in here, and you don't want to sit on this bench. So when you come in, just sit here. Let's just do one at a time.
Oh,
yep. Just sit down right here. There you go. Now, let me show you how it worked. So, see this thing right here?
Yeah.
That's on hydraulics, and it would spin forward and meet up with that hole. See that hole right there?
Yeah.
And that's where the ammunition would have came through. So there's elevators, and you can see that door right there.
Yeah.
That opens, and that's how everything comes into this room. So, and there's guys in here. Now you can imagine, see that seating spot right there?
Yeah.
Can you imagine a bunch of people in here? This thing's flying. It fires 2 shells every minute. So all the gunpowder comes up here from way down below, and then this big giant shell, they load it all into the gun, and then this thing packs it up and fires it. Now when they close this door, when they fire, they actually said it wasn't as loud as you'd think. Do you know what I mean? Which is pretty incredible. That's all the steel, I imagine. But basically, this thing is flying really fast and moving, and everybody's in here with the elevators loading everything in. It's pretty insane, isn't it? Look how thick that door is. Right. So, that's that. Pretty interesting, right? And when you come back out, I'll be out in a second, and I'll show you how this thing was fired, and you'll actually get it. It's not loading. Anybody else interested?
I'll come in. Move.
So you just want to sit down there to make sure you're stable. So basically, that's where everything gets lifted into the room from the lower decks. You got your ammunition and your gunpowder bags. This mechanism comes down, meets with it, everything's loaded onto it, and then met with the gun. And then you see that then the hatch is closed and they fire. This is all on hydraulics. Basically, this whole thing, it moves incredibly fast. It's scary. But yeah, giant, basically, like I said, a giant handgun. I mean, it's insane.
So is there somebody sitting on that seat down there?
Yeah. Standing.
Standing.
And then you got, and this, they can move around too. But these guys are all trained, they're all moving, which is so wildly dangerous.
Right.
There's just no other way to do it. Do you know what I mean? You gotta lift those bags over, you got the ammunition rolled out. And then this, look at the, I mean, somebody's right here, you can imagine, this is the tube to talk into. This is a redundant system. Of course they have radios, but if those get damaged, then you can yell.
Huh.
Yeah. There's so many redundant systems that if the whole superstructure was blown off, they could drive the ship to safety. It's pretty wild.
Wow.
A swimming pool.
Let me see, Carter.
Yeah, pretty powerful.
So it's like kids like this.
No, but that would be crazy. No. One of the neat things is that there are, so each gun can fire 2 rounds every minute, right? But before the first one ever hits, all 3 fire independently. By the time the first one hits, you got 9 rounds in the air. So by the time the first one hits, there's a storm coming. Do you know what I mean? It's all going to be gone in a second. It's pretty, that's why it was put back into service with a Gold 4, because it's such a powerful weapon. Yeah. Again, these are all what came with the ship. Nobody came through here and decorated this way. This is how the ship came.
Grandpa, there's a loon on it too.
And you can imagine how somebody leaving their mark leaves this behind. You know that? Yeah.
So they can have a cup of coffee?
Yeah. You were in here for hours and hours and hours. I mean.
So how many people were in here?
All the way down 6 stories, over 120 people. Yep. And with all the explosives, it had to be quite harrowing. I can't imagine. Just the one bag of gunpowder, each one's about this big, and it takes 6 of them to fire one of these. Just being in the room with those would make me rethink my job for the captain, the team captain, and the high-ranking officers. Better food, better wait staff. I mean, a little different down below. Now, because the ship was in 3 wars, you're gonna see things all over the ship that you're gonna wonder why they're here. You'll see a 1940s soda machine down below. You'll see a 1990s soda machine. So the reason why is if it still worked, why would you replace it? So there's all this crazy mixture of items all over the ship. This is called the wardroom, like I said. And what I said before when I said, I don't know if you remember, but when I said there's paintings aboard the ship, we didn't do that. This was actually done in the 1940s and then updated by, and can you imagine, I'm sorry, but if I was an artist and my captain said, you're going to be marking on this 1940s thing aboard the USS Missouri, I would have freaked out because if you messed it up, I mean, you messed up a long history of this map. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. It's everywhere it's gone up until a certain point. It stopped painting on it after, I think, 1991. This is fascinating. So this was actually made by a hobbyist, and if you can imagine, I cannot, how many hours of work went into this, but this is the 1940s version of the ship. This is not the ship you see out there today. That's the 1990s version of the ship. The difference, the big difference, all these small guns you see everywhere are all gone today. You saw that one out there that was put back so you could see what it was like, but for the most part, all these were taken off and they're placed. When we go out there now, you'll see 4 white domes that are spread all over the ship. Those are called CWIS systems, flank systems. They're actually Gatling guns connected to the radar that vaporize anything that comes within a radius of the. It's a hail of. It's a force field of bullets, basically, and that's your new anti-aircraft. So all these lighter guns are taken off, and the ship is faster and lighter because now you don't need all these men to man those guns. Back then, you didn't have helicopters, so instead, you had planes. Now, these planes, the launch pad, it's a, like, what do you call it, catapult. It comes out over the ship like this. The plane is catapulted off, flies away, and then it lands in the water. That crane on the back swings around, picks up the plane, and puts it back. Now, I met a gentleman, former crew member, who was standing right about here on the ship when one day he sees the plane coming to land on the water, and he tells me this story personally, it was wonderful, and he sees the plane go down and crash in the water. And he saw all the guys on the fantail start to run and jump into the water, so he assumed the pilot was in the water. He runs back, pilot's not in the water, pilot's fine. He has his life jacket on, he's fine, so why is everybody jumping into the water, right? And it's not like they can lift a plane, and it's the mail plane. Everybody's saving the mail, and when he saw it was the mail, he jumped in, and so they saved the mail. Back then, you didn't have the internet, you had no way to contact home. That mail was the most valuable thing in the world to you, so they went in and saved the mail, and they actually ended up, they did save the plane according to him. So, pretty cool story. The longer you work here, the more stories that you hear. It's pretty amazing. I just met a gentleman who was aboard the ship yesterday. It was aboard the ship when it actually hit aground, which was a huge embarrassment at the time. But his wife he wrote his wife a letter that said the ship just ran aground in the most well-documented bay on Earth, you know, and she was kind of famous in their small town because it was the first news they had of it.
And so we were like in that.
Yep, you were in this first tour right here. Yep. And my office is right there, and you can, if you want to explore, we can go down to the second deck, which is one deck below us. But before we do that, let me take you to the radio room. Nobody gets to go there. Want to see it?
Sure. Why not?
Oh, first, sorry. Notice behind you that medical lamp right there? You can grab it with your hand if you want. Swivel a little bit. You can see. That's a medical, like a doctor's lamp. Yeah, exactly. You see those, like, you know, the dentist, right? Now, why is that there? It's because in an emergency, this would have been a triage thing. This would have been operating tables. The good news is, never use that way. Nobody was ever hurt in battle aboard this ship, if you can believe it. This is probably the most successful anti-aircraft platform on Earth. I mean, you couldn't hit this thing if you wanted to. The one time that a kamikaze hit it, didn't explode. There was some fire, but it was out in 3 minutes. So this was never used that way, but that's what this is. This is the sterilizers, this is all the medical equipment. Again, never used, and if you want to see something really neat, this is how it came. Still with the stuff in there.
Oh, this is John.
Isn't that wild?
Go ahead and take your trunk.
And luckily, the people who come here respect it enough that nobody steals this stuff. Not that it's worth much, but still, they're pretty neat. All right, let's go to the radio.